This presentation was recorded at the 2015 ANZICS ACCCN Annual Scientific Meeting.
So I'd like to now welcome Liz Crowe. Liz is an advanced clinical social worker in the paediatric intensive care at Mater Children's Hospital. You know, Lady Cilento?
I'm at Lady
Cilento, yep. Yep. She's a PhD candidate at the School of Medicine at the University of Queensland, St Lucia in Australia, and Liz's expertise is in grief, loss, crisis and bereavement in the acute setting. She has worked for several years in a large research project on advanced care planning with Griffith University, and she's currently doing a doctorate examining staff wellbeing and critical care to inform interventions of support and education. Liz is passionate and a humorous educator and the successful author of the little book of loss and grief that you can read while you cry. And having heard Liz speak before, she's an excellent speaker, and we look forward to her this afternoon talking to us about do we need to ventilate ourselves, staff wellbeing in PICU.
Thank you. It's interesting, I wasn't aware that we were going to have a session this morning already talking about burnout, and I feel quite passionate about this area because I feel like if you read anything at the moment, it's like basically if you work in critical care, you are screwed. Like there is no hope for us. And I don't get that feeling that everyone's on the brink. You know, like I have this feeling that people still have a huge, sense of purpose and what we're doing. And I loved what you just said, Martha, about, staying in touch with the enchantment. So many of us went to university, whether that was a short period of time ago or a long period of time, with this vision and desire to do something big in our world, whether that was just at the patient at the bedside or within our little street or whatever. And I think we can cling on to that, and I think it is part of what is a really protective factor against burnout. So I wanted to talk about, first of all, what does the research actually tell us? If we look at it in its whole total, it's very inconsistent. So half the research will say if you are a new nurse in the first 4 to 5 years of your practice, if you're a new doctor, but particularly it's around nursing, that you will struggle. You are at much higher risk of burnout than anyone else. Things are terrible for our younger staff. And then the other half of the literature says, if you're a younger person, then you're much more likely to have protective factors around you and be more resilient in the world. But if you've been working in critical care for over 15 years, things are very dire for you. So the research is completely polarised. It keeps telling us the opposite thing based on what you're looking at. The quality of what's out there is really variable. So there's several papers published in reputable journals that say things like, and I'm not joking, if you put chocolates out, your staff will be better. Your staff will probably be happier. They'll have a high risk of diabetes, but it doesn't actually say anything about how people genuinely, how does that sustain people? Giving one person a Freddo Frog, which is a little chocolate, Martha.
Is it dark chocolate?
No, it's milk chocolate. But you know what I mean? Is that sustainable, or do you eat it most women go, why did I just eat that? That it's a momentary thing that isn't sustainable. The location is hugely different. So a lot of the research based on critical care around the world, we can't compare it to how we work in America and Australia. In Poland, if you read the rates of burnout in Poland, it's huge, but most people are doing 35 hours additional on top of their roster a week. If you worked in Coles Deli and you got called in to do 35 hours additional work a week, you would be burnt out. So we can't just look at the literature and say, critical care is at the worst period of time, because it's not true. And in actual fact, in paediatrics, the latest research is saying that amongst the cohort, people are much more likely to be burnt out if you work in general medical or in general surgical. And I think a big part of that is because there is no kudos attached to that. It's not a glory area. They don't come to conferences and people give them stuff. Okay? No one cares. So, no, it's true. Because if you go to a barbecue, if you go out somewhere socially and someone says, what do you do? And you say, I'm a nurse in dermatology at a paediatric hospital. People go, I've got a mole here. But if you go somewhere and they say, what do you do? And you say, I work in intensive care, they go, oh my God, you must be a really special person. And you give it this, oh, not really. You know, no one writes about those neurological sweet spots that we actually get all the time. There are lots of things in our area of work that are exciting and different and challenging, and people aren't researching about that. There's also a huge gender bias. There's a gender bias in our population anyway, but it's very hard for us to say everyone who works in critical care is at risk of burnout when we have such small cohorts of men. Are they being as impacted as women? No one seems to really be able to tell us. And then there's a huge discipline bias. The majority of research that is done on nursing, and it's not done in the wider team of the paediatric or adult intensive care. The other thing is that, you know, I did social maths at school. I'm not a huge researcher. I'm trying to get there. I can count change. That's about my mathematical ability. But far be it to me, but I'm still going to mock the Maslach burnout inventory, which is the most famous measurement of burnout that we have in the world. It's the one that health uses all the time. But if you look at it, you know, I feel used up at the end of the day. What working parent doesn't? You know, is that actually really just specific to health professionals? Or if we took this and ran it across the general population, how many people would get into bed and go, I'm not even tired? I don't know anyone who's in that boat. No one. And, you know, for those of us who are blessed working mothers, you know, you go to any school ground, even if you see mothers who don't work, they're so busy. And they're all in active wear. I hate that. But I bet you they feel used up at the end of the day. I don't know most people who don't feel used up at the end of the day. Working with people all day is a real strain on me. If you go anywhere in your life and you ask someone how they are, they say they're busy. Busyness is the new whatever. You have no purpose in life unless you're busy, and we have busyness competitions. Have you noticed that? It's like, oh, I'm so busy, I only got 7 hours sleep last night. It's like, oh, I'm so busy, I only got 5. And someone's like, I haven't even been to bed. So it doesn't matter, you know, like I have one brother who's an engineer and runs a company for like 7,000 people. Then I have another brother who works in a lighting shop. I work in paediatric intensive care, my other brother's a policeman. All of us at the end of the day would say, how hard is it to work with people? All of us say that. I feel fatigued when I get up in the morning and have to face another day. Like, very few people get out of bed every day and go, yay! I love life. There is nothing that would make me stay in this bed. Nothing. Nobody is doing that. Not even on holidays, people don't go, yay! You know, or maybe on holidays. But I think the questions that we're asking probably aren't really giving us the results we need to know. If people are genuinely burned out, what is it about your life in general? Is it just about work? So we're using these measurements, but how much of that pertains to work and how much of that pertains to your life? And we don't ask those questions. All right, so my PhD is saying, let's have an ecological approach to this. Like, are there phases in our lives that are just harder? All my friends who have just turned 50 plus keep telling me, this is the best age I've ever been. And I'm like, what about the pause? What about menopause? Don't say how, I mean, you know, like, they're like, no, don't worry about that. Your kids are growing up, you know, it's a new phase. Like, you know, is there actually phases in life that are harder? Is your life harder in general if you have small children? Is your life harder in general if you're trying to find a partner? Is your life more difficult when you've got the biggest mortgage? You know, are there actually lifespans that we already know from general information, that we know then when we're running research in critical care, that people are going to be more disadvantaged, more tired, more exhausted, simply because of life, not necessarily because of the job. The other thing is that when we look at critical care research and people's well-being, people often say, tell me about death. Tell me how much death disturbs you. Tell me how much futility disturbs you. If I only ask you that question, then I can't find out what are the good things about the job. What are the things that are meaningful? Is there anything good about the job? So if you are only measuring one thing, you can only report on one thing. And we need to keep that in mind when we're reading this literature. In my study, so I've got nearly 300 surveys across 3 PICUs, what we're finding is the demographics are hugely changed from even when I started my career in PICU 20 years ago. So initially in Queensland, everyone was born in Queensland, we all went to work in Queensland, we stayed in Queensland, we didn't learn anything outside of Queensland. Now we have this hugely diverse population. So in our staff alone, 16% have English as a second language. 16%, that's significant. 38% of our staff were not born in Australia. This is really important because our job at times is hard. If you move over here as a nurse, as a registrar, as a physio, as a dietitian, and you start working in an environment that's tough, who do you talk to at the end of the day? You don't want to just start in a unit and at the end of the day go, I'm really feeling fragile. Because I was like, what's with the new girl? She's a psycho. You know, like... We also know that the most important area where people get support from is within the team. And it's been really interesting to me because I've been asking questions about who offers you the most support. So I'm doing qualitative and quantitative. And all of the nurses do this. I say, who offers you the most support? And they go, my husband. No, he doesn't. It's like they feel like they need to say their spouse first off, and then they say, it's my work colleagues. The other thing is that if you take some of what they say out of context, it sounds like they're working as sex workers. So there is one nurse, seriously, this is what she says. I said, so if you live with your family, at the end of a really tough shift, would you come home and say to your family, this is what happened? Would you say this to your parents? If you take it out of context, this is what she says. She says, on the way home, if I really think about work, I start to cry. And I keep doing the block in the car until I stop crying because no parent wants to send their little girl off into that environment and know that's what they're doing for a living. She's talking about being a critical care nurse because she is worried about the impact her work will have on her family. And lots of people do that. Now, what we know about emotional contagion is your team is your greatest asset and your biggest allergen. So if there is someone who really genuinely is burnt out in your team, if there's someone who's really toxic, that spreads faster than a virus or passive smoking. That's what emotional contagion tells us. So you know that one person in the team who's like, oh, we tried that night, it didn't work. We've done this before, this person's an idiot. They actually can do damage if you don't quarantine them exactly like you would someone with a virus. 50% of our workforce is under 35. So if people who are under 35 are more at risk, we need to know that. If people under 35 are our energizers, the people who are going to inspire us for the future, we need to tap into that as well. All right, the other things that we know about this that's coming through my studies is that 70% of people are impacted when their colleagues are distressed. Again, if you think about emotional contagion, what are we doing to look after the team? If you don't look after the team, you're not looking after the individual. If you don't look after the individual, you're not looking after the team. It's the same. 30% of people really believe the work that they do in critical care is impacting their family life. What does that mean? Does that mean because they're working longer hours? Is it the shifts? 50% of our staff are saying that because they work in a PICU, it impacts their parenting. They're more concerned about the children. They're more likely to think that their kids can die when they go over for a sleepover. Things like that. We don't talk about that anywhere in conferences. 67% believe that night duty is significantly affecting their well-being. But if you go looking for really good research on night duty and the impact it has, it's pretty hard to find. 65% have experienced a significant life event while working in critical care. Guess what? People who work in critical care are alive. Therefore, they're going to be impacted by things like divorce, infertility, miscarriage, unable to find a partner, parent gets sick, have a child with a disability. They still got to come to work and do this work. I think one of the things that we, again, don't talk about in critical care, which is really different to any other specialty in health, is that we have to hear about what's in our unit at home because of media, whether it's social media or on the TV or on the news. I never watch the news. I don't want to. I don't want to know what car accident there's been and how many kids are in the PICU and what. But so all my friends text me, guess what? There's a burns kid. I bet you pick up that kid tomorrow. I'm like, yay. I really needed to know about that the night before I go to work. So that makes us quite unique. When we asked people what were the stresses, and we did it globally, we didn't say, what are the stresses for you at work? We said, what are the biggest stresses for you? And we gave them a whole list, which included lots of things about work, including, death of a child, general distress. The top 5 things that came up had nothing to do with patient care. It was 1, conflict in personal relationships. 2, this whole myth of work-life balance, which doesn't exist. If you go to work for 12 hours a day, that's half your day gone and you go to sleep. There can be no balance in that. That's stupid. It's work-life integration that we need to be talking about. And also work-life balance kind of insinuates straight away that work can't be good. Work can't be fun. I moonwalk more at work than I do anywhere else. That's fun. We have great floors for it at Lady Slender. They've really designed those well. The 3rd concern was financial. The 4th concern was general concerns about the future, and work finally came into it, and it was about bullying and conflict. So if you ask people globally, it doesn't even come up about death or, general distress in the PICU. If you ask specifically about PICU, what we've had come up is it's the general sadness and distress. People actually, when we looked and asked them about death, often were very clear about they'd done a really good job and they'd been able to provide a meaningful death, and that was actually a hugely protective factor. But if you look at the research when they ask about death, because they say, what's a death that ruminates? If you said to me, off the top of your head, think of the 3 worst deaths you've ever done in PICU, I could cry about it. I'm not damaged about it, but those memories are very powerful. I would cry. That doesn't mean I'm burnt out. That means that I hold a deep sorrow. And that's normal. Some of those deaths were horrendous. Made me dry reach in the toilet. But I don't have to embrace that sorrow every single day of my life. Child protection cases are often huge in paediatrics, and bullying from other staff members. These are the things that are most distressing in the PICUs we looked at. On the flip side, when you ask people about the distress, they can name it, but when you ask people about the rewards, they can name that just as fast. So feeling like I made a difference. If you look at the happiness research, if you look at the positive psychology research, what it very clearly says is that to be able to give to another human being, to have a meaningful life, feel grateful what you have, means that you should be able to be quite happy. So you guys should be amongst the happiest people in the universe. Are you feeling it deep down? But you know what I mean? So many people get to a point in their life and go, I don't feel like I'm making a difference. I don't feel like I've done anything with my life. Every day we should get to go home and say, I made a difference. Where would that unit, that family, that younger staff member, that inexperienced registrar have been today without you? Every day we get to make a difference. We get to help families in difficult times, we do something meaningful, and we get to increase our skills and knowledge. It grows all the time in critical care. When we asked people how they thought they coped, 82% said humour. I was bloody happy about that. I think humour is really important. Using their family and friends, using exercise. Now, interesting, Gillian Colville's just done a study in the UK where she found that people who used exercise as a primary source of coping actually had higher rates of burnout. I have a theory amongst that. Lots of people who are attracted to critical care are type A personalities. You only like to do things that you can excel at. So if someone says to you, exercise is going to make you feel better, you go, oh, you know what? I'm going to do an Ironman. That's stupid. You are taking yourselves from this critical care environment of high pressure, high stress, run as fast as you can, and then you go, I'm going to run as fast, I'm going to have a day off and I'm going to run for 7 hours straight. No, this is not going to help your burnout. It's stupid. It's saying, go for a gentle swim, walk your dog, do yoga, do a dance class. Don't do a half Ironman, don't do a marathon. You're taking your physical body and doing exactly what you do to it in work. It doesn't make sense. They use social activities or TV. Interestingly, alcohol was number 12, and I think that was probably a lie. We shall see. What staff actually want is support from trained members of their own team. They don't want an external person to come in. People are very interested in psychological debriefing, and they want more discussions on clinic and ethics. And if you look at the moral distress literature, it's because we don't have those discussions. We don't actually know why did the clinician make that decision. We don't get to hear the history and the context that is driving those decisions about why are we still going? Why are we flogging this individual at the end of the ventilator. So let's talk about what we can actually do about it. And I'm a big reader. This is a really quirky book about two brothers in the Western. It's like a Western, I guess. And they go and kill people who owe other people money. And they get to their 30s, which is like the middle age in the 1980s, like in the 1800s. And one of them starts to develop a conscience. And he's not sure that they're doing the right thing or that he's going to go to heaven. But he says, we can all of us be hurt, and no one is exclusively safe from sadness and worry. That's why we need to ask ourselves about these questions, because this is our world. Nowhere else, really, outside of critical care, you know, an emergency, can people say, this is our world. It's crazy. It's surreal. Sometimes we walk away and you go, did that just happen? Did I just actually hear that story? And these stories are getting more and more overwhelming. Demographics are changing. We have these people who are having horrendous accidents who are refugees from war-torn countries. We have people who, you know, we don't know who the father is, 7 different men turn up. You know, like the demographics, it's changing. It is making things so much more complicated. And it's going to get harder. Morally, it's going to get harder. Ethically, it's going to get harder. The technology is constantly changing. The people are constantly changing. We have to change if we're going to survive. The other thing that's really bad for us is we have this self-care blind spot, because you come home and you can think, that was a really rough day, you know, or things are really tough, or my child's got the flu, oh, but at least they don't have a neuroblastoma. I better keep going. You know, like, I don't really feel like I can come home and complain about my day when I just helped that husband say goodbye to his wife. You know, so we have this whole self-care blind spot. If you work in a grocery store, they don't come home and say, I've got really sore feet. Oh, I shouldn't say that because some people have no feet. They don't do that because they don't have this comparison. I mean that in a very, you know, politically correct way. The other problem with our lives at the moment is that we've been bombarded by positive psychology. So initially when we looked at people's emotions, we only looked at the negative. Then we had this whole, like, no, we have to look at the positive side of things. But we went too far. So for those of you who are blessed enough to have watched the Lego movie like 100 times, there's a song, everything is awesome, everything, you know, and that's how we have to say, so that people, now, our language is shrinking. I love talking to the POMs because they say things like, I feel poorly, I'm distressed, I'm a little down. Here, we only say, you're either depressed or you're ecstatic. Like, there's nothing in the middle. My 11-year-old said to me the other day, his best friend's grandmother's dying, and I said, how's Darcy going? And he said, I didn't ask him in case it made Darcy depressed. I said, Darcy's 11, his grandmother's dying, she's 86. It's not going to make him depressed. He might be sad, he might be confused, he might be bored with it. We don't use that word. But can you see how they're mimicking what society's saying? You break up with a guy, oh, you must be depressed. No, you need to eat too much ice cream and pash a stranger in a cab line. That's what we did for years. For years. And it healed us. So, everything is not awesome. If you get up every day and you're happy, like really happy, you're mentally ill. You are mentally ill. No one is happy all the time. It's supposed to be 70-30. 70% of the time you should feel reasonably okay, and 30% of the time you're going to feel crappy. That means you are normal. Okay, I'm sorry. That's just the facts. All right. Resilience. We're all talking about resilience. How do we build resilient children? If you want to build a resilient child, this is my #1 tip for you. It's got nothing to do with this talk. If you want to build a resilient child, say no to them all the time. No. No, you can't have that. And don't lie to them. If they show you a drawing and it's terrible, go, not your best. Because that is life. That is preparing them for the rest of their life. If we keep telling kids all the time you're going to be amazing and do amazing things, they're going to be really disappointed when they get out there. It's not amazing. People criticize them. That's life. So resilience is actually not a psychological term. We've just started using it. So apparently no one gets premenstrual tension anymore. That was a 90s thing. Now we're all aiming for resilience. It's just a little word. You know, RSI was the big thing in the 90s. Remember everyone had a sore wrist? Now everyone needs to be resilient. Not a psychological term. Resilience came from the engineers. A resilient building was one that in a storm or a tornado or a fire, the foundations would crack, the building could sway, but it didn't fall over. So what does resilience actually look like? Sobbing all the way home can be resilience. Getting home and thinking, you know what, I'm done. I actually don't think I can do this anymore. I hate it. Last year, in our hospital, the social workers go to all the MET calls. We keep the family to the side. You know, and tell them what's going on, how much they should be worried. So when kids are like trying to fight off the tube and people on the chest, I usually say to them, you're not coming to ICU, your child is okay. You know, the ward's just got a little bit panicked about something. I thought that was funny. But the thing is that, what was I even talking about? I've lost my train of thought.
Resilience.
Something to do with resilience. Yeah. Anyway, last year we went to a MET call of a child that went to get some stitches out. No one knew the story. The child arrested and died in a tiny clinical room with a mother that was 49 weeks pregnant, and we were all covered in vomit and blood. 39 weeks pregnant, and it was horrendous. And I went home and cried for the whole weekend. I never cry. I cried and I cried. I went to my dance class, which normally makes me feel better. I had to leave because I was crying. I just cried. I couldn't get it together. I couldn't talk about it. And eventually my husband said, instead of crying and then containing, why don't you just ask yourself what you're so distressed about? And then I went through it all, like, it was unexpected, we didn't know, the mother was heavily pregnant, you know, like, the doctors were distressed at the time, everyone was crying, it was in this tiny room, it was messy, you know, it was it just went on. And then once I got curious about it and pulled it all to pieces, I thought, yeah, no wonder I'm upset. That was really sad. So I cried for the whole weekend. I wasn't depressed. I wasn't burnt out. I was sad. I'm still sad when I think about it. But then I went back to work and we ran some debriefing and we all cried and then we got on with it. That is resilience. It's your ability to bounce back. It's not your ability to bounce off. No, that doesn't hurt, I don't feel anything. That is not normal. That's concerning. So resilience is still being hurt, still being impacted. It's just not breaking and leaving the profession. The other thing is that we're now so afraid of negative feelings. You know, like, self-doubt is a good thing. It keeps you on your toes. If you're doubting yourself, but you're not, if you're doubting yourself and you just ruminate and you don't go anywhere, then you're in trouble. But if you self-doubt and say, is this the best talk that I can do today? Do I feel confident in this? Do I think some people are going to listen to me? How can I make this better? That's a powerful thing. Fear is a good thing when it's used properly. If a tiger starts to chase you and you're like, I'm not scared of that, you're just going to get eaten. Fear makes you run. That's a good emotion. Sometimes if your heart is pounding, your body is getting you ready to do something. The amount of people who say to me, I couldn't do public speaking because my heart pounds. Your heart's always pounding. That's why you're alive. That's normal. Like, Usain Bolt doesn't get on the front of the 100 metres and go, I'm just going to have a smoke, have a think. You know, like, that's adrenaline. It's getting ready for him to run. It's the same thing. You know, so, again, it's the 80-20 rule. You just shouldn't be so overwhelmed by it that you're crippled. Humour is fantastic, but it can't be the sole way that you cope. It can't. That's the fat policeman at the bar telling joke after joke about criminals who then has a heart attack in his peanuts and dies, right? It can't be the sole thing that you use. But humour is really important. And there's a big difference between humour and political correctness. And I get very tired of organisations and bureaucrats and ethics saying, we cannot laugh at things. We have to laugh at things. If we don't laugh at things, we're all going to walk away. Some of what we see, society is asking us to hold some of the worst filth it has to offer. It asks us to hold that. Us, the police, the fireys, the ambulance, the military, sometimes lawyers, sometimes they are the filth. Jails, they ask us to hold the filth. If we can't laugh about that, if we can't have black humour about that, we're in trouble. And there is great science around this. Humour allows you to have a psychological reset. It allows you to step out. Once one of our consultants, we had 4 family meetings in a row of 4 children, well, healthy children, who all had significant head injuries in a period of 12 hours and ended up in our unit. One fell out of a tree, one got hit by a car, one got knocked off their bike, and so we just went in, with these families who just 12 hours prior had this lovely, rich, healthy life, this blessed child who we were saying, the child you knew has gone, or the child you know is going to die. We just did it over and over. And when we came out after the third time, I'm like, do you feel like we're in Groundhog Day? And we started laughing. We're not laughing at the families. We're laughing because this is bloody awful. Who wants to do this? This isn't fun. But to have that little humour, it's a way of just distracting from the horror. Stepping back from a moment, having a giggle, then you go back in as equally respectful and caring as you have. It keeps you sane. It increases your social support if the unit's all able to have a little laugh. Who doesn't laugh at dumb kids' names? Not dumb kids, kids' dumb's names. You know, like, there are some stupid names out there, you know? You know that a kid called Einstein is not going to have this really full life, unfortunately. That's a terrible name to have. It helps you release nervous energy and to reduce stress, and it actually improves relationships, not only with teams, but with families. It helps build relationships very fast when you can have a laugh about things. So it's really important that we do still have somewhere safe that we can laugh. All right. The other thing is that when you look at the research, everyone now is talking about mindfulness. Have you seen that? Like mindfulness for pain, mindfulness for this, mindfulness. I have tried to do mindfulness with some of the greatest gurus in the world. No go. I can't do it. And I hate it because they say, how was that? You know, they get you to do a mindfulness and then they say, how was it? And it sounds like everyone's having an orgasm but me. It's like, first my mind was busy and then it went black and then it was like a blossoming flower. And they're like, and what did you? And I was like, oh, Black Betty, oh, Black Betty. I can't. I'm either like, there is something crazy going in my brain or I'm like, I'm fast asleep. I can't do mindfulness. But I can walk with music on and switch my brain off. So singing Black Betty really loudly while I walk helps me. You have to find what works for you. Someone might be able to do a 20k run and really feel better at the end of the day. I doubt it. But apparently some people can. But for you, you have to find what it is. If you say to me, oh, if I drink half a bottle of rum, I feel really good. No, you're an alcoholic. You can't do that. We can't depend on just one thing. We've got to have a whole range of things that we can draw on all of the time to help us with this work. And the main thing that we need more than anything else is self-knowledge. Because you see people like this, I say, how do you do this job? I don't know. What do you mean you don't know? I don't know. I just go to work and I do it. And then if you have terrible day after terrible day after terrible day, and then your hospitals merge, and it gets harder, and it gets harder. You can literally see people start to get weighed down because they don't have that level of self-awareness. Do you have something in your brain that says, you know what, you need a holiday? And we do things, particularly in our cultures, that are really unhelpful. When I was in my 20s, anyone who worked with me then, I was drunk from Friday afternoon till 5 o'clock Sunday morning, and I was a legend. No, I was an alcoholic. I was a high-functioning alcoholic. Like, that was dangerous. I did stupid things. But everyone rewarded my behaviour. They couldn't wait to get to work, and if I had a bump on my head from falling over in the shower or, you know, oh, it was so funny. No, those people are in trouble. You have to have a range of things. We have to be really aware. What are our cues? What are the families that trigger you off? What are the scenarios? Is it when, you know, if you've got an elderly parent and then you look after an elderly parent and the family's a bit like you, is that your trigger? Is it if the child's name is the same as your child's name? You know, there is nothing, I find it so horrendous to have someone screaming out their child's name that is my child's name. 2 years ago, I remember looking after a woman whose 11-year-old had just drowned in a pool, knowing that my 11-year-old was at a pool with a friend, and she kept saying, why did I go to work? Why did I? And I wanted to say, I've got to go home. I've got to get out of here. Like, I've got to, you know, like, it just, and I had to really say to myself, stop. You know, he's safe. I've got a job to do. You need to support this woman. But just for a moment, I could feel this absolute panic. Because I have an 11-year-old who does stupid things. He's a boy. They do front flips. They do jump off roofs of houses even though you tell them because they don't believe they can be hurt. And lots of parents say that, you know, like lots of parents say things like, Don't run or you'll get a pencil in your eye. I've seen a pencil in an eye penetrate a brain, so it actually means something to me. We have to know what are our triggers. And again, we do all these dumb things because we think it's going to help us. So we do things like, I want to go overseas for 10 weeks, so I'm not going to take holidays for 2.5 years. And then we start to feel really exhausted and really disillusioned. And we start to hate everyone we work with. And every family starts to smell. You're tired. We can't afford to do that in this line of work. I don't buy into that we're all burnt out. I don't. I think our lives are very challenging. I think work is challenging. I think equally work can be exceptionally meaningful. I actually love what I do. And I don't love watching families suffer. I suffer along with them. But I would be bored working somewhere else. I like the pace. And I think this is the other really big challenge for us, is how do we say we love our job? We love our job, people die. We love our job, huge trauma. How can we say that? Society often isn't prepared to hear that there's actually this constant push for us about being able to own up how we feel about work. The other big thing that I have learned as a major lesson in the last year is your capacity is not my capacity. I can feel like I'm doing okay, and then I meet someone like Martha Curley and I feel really lazy. Does anyone else have that? When she's like, everybody can do research. It's like, really? Like,
Really?
Today I shaved my legs for the first time in 3 weeks and I looked like a Yeti had lost all its fur in the bathtub of the hotel. And I was like so excited to be having a bath. That was a luxury. So I think your capacity is not my capacity. So if you're not doing research and at the moment what you're doing is parenting or being a single person and having fun or growing up or trying to, find the partner of your life or trying to get pregnant, that just might be your thing at the moment. Everything has its phases, and not all of us can be Martha Curley, or else you'll never get to come back to Australia again if we're all excelling at the same rate you are. So your capacity is not my capacity. When you're not doing what someone like Martha's doing, it doesn't mean that you're lazy. It just means that you might have different interests or you might be excelling someone else. Someone has to run tuck shop. Someone has to look after elderly parents. Someone has to work in critical care. Someone, but I am really jealous of those women who are in active wear all day or playing tennis at 10 a.m. I want to know who they married. But I think it's really important. We can't keep setting these unrealistic goals against people that we know nothing about. All right? All right. Oh, I've got one more. Okay, so these are the other things. Number one, know yourself, know yourself, know yourself. Know the things that trigger you. Know when you're exhausted. Sometimes you might have to take a mental health day. That happens. It's not the end of the world. It doesn't mean you've got terrible work ethic. But if it does happen, I'm not saying do it once a month, but if it happens that you're really feeling like it's overwhelming, it's okay to take a little step back. Give yourself permission to experience a range of emotions without catastrophizing. So if you have a day after work where you just think, oh my God, I'm done, like I did after that net call, I thought, I'm done. I've actually seen too many children die. I've held too many bereaved mothers. I can't do it anymore. And then I'm thinking, what else am I going to do? I can't do hair. I'm not good with fashion. I couldn't even, then I got into this whole panic. I'm going to be unemployed and how are we going to pay the money? Sometimes you can just be sad. We don't have to put this huge narrative to it. You can just be sad. Be gentle with yourself. Like, why are we so hard on ourselves? You have to treat yourself like a friend. If your friend makes a mistake, or unless it is your partner. People are pretty harsh on their partners. But if your friend makes a mistake, you don't go, you're an idiot, and you're fat. You can't even fit into those jeans. You don't do that. But how often do we do that to ourselves? It's silly. Naomi Wolf said at a conference a couple of years ago, and I'm sorry if this bores the men in the audience, but a couple of years ago she was saying, imagine if women could harness all the energy that they put into thinking about their bodies and put it somewhere else, what we could achieve in the world. See, the women don't laugh because they know it is a shitload of time. All right. Be gentle with yourself. Be gentle with others. Build little pockets of stillness in your life. I can't be still. I'm never still, but I try to walk for an hour and a half a day with some music or with one of my kids and the dog. That is my stillness. It's just my get out. I don't tweet. I don't get on my phone. I don't do research. I just walk. And I try and appreciate things like sunsets and clouds and leaves and take in the colour and realise that the world is so much bigger than the intensive care unit or what's going on in our hospital. So much bigger. Because sometimes, I think it'd be fair to say that we've had some challenges in our hospital this year, and it's always very grounding to meet people to go, I didn't know there was a new hospital. We can think it's so big, lots of people don't even know it exists. All right, sleep. Sleep is a big challenge for me, but I try to make sure when I am asleep, I'm asleep. I try to create a good environment where it's dark, but apparently sleep is really important. And again, when you go back to capacity, I live on about 5.5 hours sleep a night, but some people need 10. If you need 10 hours sleep a night, don't work full-time and do a PhD. It's not possible. Fuel your body well. I can't believe the amount of parents in particular will say to your kids, eat that fruit, eat your vegetables, you're not eating those chips, and then as soon as the kids go to bed, you're like, what we put in our bodies, whether we like it or not, fuels us. And I think that we get mistaken, I've had a really bad day, and look, I'm no anorexic, you don't get an ass like this from salad, okay, so I'm not saying you can never eat anything bad, but I think when we've had a really tough day, we've got this whole thing I deserve it. I deserve to lie on the couch. I've had a really big week, I need to lie on the couch and eat Tim Tams, this is all that I can achieve today. Energy creates energy. So if you've had a really bad week and you lie on the couch and you eat junk food and watch trashy TV for 14 hours straight, you're still going to feel like crap on Monday. It's much better to get up, try and eat something healthy, feel good about yourself, and then have an afternoon nap. That's much better for you. So energy creates energy, and what you put in your body is your fuel. So how are you fueling your body? And if it's pure tequila, it'll be fun at the time, huge regrets the next day. All right. Laugh often. There's lots of funny things that happen that we should be able to giggle at. I love it when families say, yeah, I've been checking the stats instead of the sats. It always makes me laugh to myself. I'm not laughing at them, I just find it cute. All right, laugh often. There's lots of things that are still funny that happen in the world that are okay. Don't go home and watch Who Will Love My Children and, My Sister's Keeper and just surround yourself by depressing stuff. You have to make an effort to be happy. And the more you practice an emotion, the better you get at it. That's the other thing. So if you go home and you say, I'm so stressed, I'm so burnt out, I'm the most burnt out person that I know, I feel really burnt out, I feel so burnt out, you will excel at burning out. If you come home and say, I need to be happy, I feel grateful for the things that I have, if you concentrate on that, you will excel at it. All right, understand the meaning. Tap into what it is that was enchanting. Why did you go into this profession? What did you hope to achieve? And take those things on board every day. We do get little moments of meaning all day, every day that we don't hold on to. If a family send a card to your unit with a box of chocolates that get devoured people haven't seen food for the last 6 months, we should all actually read the cards. These are heartfelt messages of how much you meant to people in the worst moments of their lives. We need to savor that. And remember that the work-life balance thing is actually a myth. It's work-life integration. And if you actually love work and you enjoy it, then you won't be so traumatized when you have to go there. If you're very clear about what it is that you're doing there. So I'm going to finish by saying, on behalf of all of those families, no matter where they were in your career, that you had significant moments where it was important, where they took the time to write a card or to say thank you, or a child smiled at you, or they came back in. Thank you. These are the things that we need to hold on to and savour and remain passionate about, and I can assure you, you won't burn out. Thank you.